For years, Arshia Bhagwan stayed in an abusive relationship. When she caught her husband cheating, he snapped. "If you interfere too much in my life, I'll give you talaq." The Guardian, October 20th, 2016 explains that a practice in India called triple talaq gives Muslim men the power to end a marriage by repeating the single word talaq 3 times. But only men have the power to do this, and once the words are spoken, the divorce is instantaneously final, leaving their ex-wives with no family, no money, and unbearable shame in their Muslim communities. The Times of India reported December 8th, 2016, over 20 Muslim countries have banned the triple talaq. But in India, the harmful practice still persists because divorce isn't overseen by the government, but by individual religious faiths. For Muslim Indians, triple talaq is defended by Sharia, or the conservative Islamic laws interpreted from the Quran. And the Times of India goes on to explain, 1 in 11 Muslim women living in India are survivors of the triple talaq. The word survivor is critical, because triple talaq acts as a form of mental and emotional abuse that controls and oppresses women not only in their individual families, but across India. Just this week, the Supreme Court of India agreed to hear a case attempting to ban triple talaq. But advocates of women fear that the court will uphold the practice, defending Sharia's ability to rhetorically, financially, and culturally oppress women, warranting the research question: how does the Indian Islamic practice of triple talaq affect the fight to end global violence against women? To answer, we will use Lisa Hajar's article, Religion, State, Power, and Domestic Violence in Muslim Societies. Hajar examines unrecognizable violence in Muslim communities, or how violence is disguised as policy and then becomes difficult to detect, making it a valuable model to analyze the effect of the triple talaq on the global movement to eradicate violence against women. Today, we will explore the model, apply it to the triple talaq, and draw critical implications to better understand the impact of 3 simple but powerful words. Arshia begged her husband not to give the talaq. She told him, have as many affairs as you want, but if he kicked her out, she'd have nowhere to go. Violence against women becomes even more complex when national laws against it conflict with religious laws that allow it. Hajar explains that religious policy perpetuates violence against women by disguising it as religious law. She calls this unrecognizable violence, and it happens when religious laws meet 3 criteria: preserving the patriarchy, defending Sharia over state law, and framing violence as religiously defensible. First, in order for violence to become unrecognized, it has to be concealed under the typical patriarchal family dynamic. Hajar explains, dominant interpretations of Sharia define men as heads of the household and give them guardianship and responsibility over their wives, while conservative interpretations allow men to beat their wives for disobedience, keeping them financially, emotionally, and culturally trapped. Second, violence becomes unrecognizable when Sharia trumps Indian law. When a legal issue like divorce is settled under Sharia and not Indian law, that violence is much more easily concealed. This is because only some Muslims practice conservative Sharia, while others don't adhere to the policy at all. These wide interpretations of harmful acts like beating your wife make it difficult to recognize and difficult to prosecute. Third, violence becomes unrecognizable when it's framed as religiously defensible. According to Hajar, this happens when threats to combat violence are perceived as attacks on Islam. Almost like saying, if you don't let us beat our wives, you don't let us practice religious freedom. By making abuse religiously defensible, it leaves women with very little recourse. Smartphones negatively impact people like me because I spend too much time on Facebook. But smartphones also negatively impact women in India because triple talaq can be emailed, Facebooked, texted, and Skyped, which is why we must apply Hajar's model to the triple talaq. First, triple talaq reinforces patriarchy within Muslim societies. Muslim men that defend the practice argue that it's a right given by the Quran, but this practice is mentally and emotionally abusive for women during the marriages, as was shown with Shayara, a woman living in Kashipur, India. She told the Washington Post January 31st, 2017, Muslim women have their hands tied to the threat of divorce dangling, ready to drop at the whims of their husbands who love undisputed power. Second, Muslims can practice any interpretation of Sharia they want within their own families. According to the aforementioned Guardian, Indian laws don't state any minimum age for marriage or the procedure for divorce. Instead, the rights are left entirely up to how families interpret their own religious texts in Hindu and Muslim communities. This justifies triple talaq by taking a legal issue, divorce, and making it an issue of personal faith. Third, any attacks on the triple talaq are dismissed as challenges to Islam, which is why the upcoming Supreme Court case is expected to fail. When we challenge Islam, this makes it difficult for others to expect what is going to come. And they say that according to the aforementioned Washington Post, people like Arshad Madani, head of India's largest Muslim group, argue upholding the practices and values of Islam are more important than the pursuit of women's rights. After facing years of abuse, Arshia's husband sent her a letter, and she was talaqed. She hasn't seen him since and was left with nothing, which prompts us to return to the research question. How does the Indian Islamic practice of triple talaq affect the fight to end global violence against women? The presence of unrecognizable violence like triple talaq can have devastating impacts on global efforts to eradicate violence. When we fail to see unrecognizable harms like triple talaq as inherently linked to domestic violence, we fail to understand the depth of violence against women worldwide, and our efforts to prevent and prosecute fail, especially in communities where religion is held to equal or greater value than the law. This can be explored through two implications. First, on a rhetorical level, we have to expand our definitions of domestic violence to include forms of abuse like triple talaq that often go unrecognized. By searching for and prosecuting unrecognizable violence, we can elevate women worldwide. But this is no easy feat. According to the New York Post, October 20th, 2016, some critics fear that by banning the triple talaq, it will force husbands into unthinkable and illegal ways to get out of their marriages, like murdering their wives or burning them alive. As we fight to expand our definitions of violence, it's critical that we're mindful of backlash and strategically prevent it. Second, on a legal level, the role of the state is crucial because they have to prosecute and punish these acts of violence. By allowing religious institutions to handle abuse internally, it rhetorically suggests that domestic violence isn't a matter of the law, but a matter of personal choice. As forms of abuse like triple talaq continue, it's crucial that we not only start conversations about what defines domestic violence, but also urge international bodies, like the federal government of India, to make divorce rhetorically and legally consistent. The practice of triple talaq is mentally and emotionally painful. Even if it never happens, it keeps women under the oppressive thumb of maybe. Today, we outlined Hajar's model on unrecognizable violence, applied it to the triple talaq, and drew critical implications. We cannot eradicate violence against women without first understanding unrecognizable violence. Women like Arshia deserve more.